For joining us. You're juggling a number of stories, and for some, the royal family might be more serious, but I say that in jest. But seriously, this other story, this one about what the UK, the US, and Canada believe is that this commercial flight was brought down by a missile.
Yes, Peter, lots of news here and across the world this week. But in relation to the Iran crash, well, pretty shockingly, all Western leaders, or according to a majority of Western leaders, the UK, the US, Australia and Canada, all evidence is pointing to the fact that this aircraft was brought down, may well have been brought down by Iran's own air defences. Now, this was a Ukrainian airliner that was heading to Kiev when it crashed. All 176 souls on board were lost. And after speaking to the Ukrainian president, Boris Johnson, the UK Prime Minister, has somewhat changed tack after initially saying that there was no indication that the plane was shot down by an Iranian missile. Here in Britain, the UK government are now saying that there is a body of information to support that theory, while it may well have been unintentional. So Canadian Prime Minister as well, Justin Trudeau, of course 73 of the victims were Canadian. He said that there is multiple intelligence sources in Canada that suggest this was a surface-to-air missile that brought this plane down. US officials too saying that with a high degree of certainty they can confirm that this was the case. We of course heard Donald Trump earlier when asked about this crash, saying that he had his suspicions that this may well have been a mistake, because of course the timing of this plane crash is extraordinary, and that hasn't been lost on anyone. It came down within hours of Iran firing several ballistic missiles on US military bases in retaliation, of course, for the US assassination of General Qasem Soleimani, their second highest in command. Now, of course, all eyes now turning to Iran and the subsequent investigation. We know that today those all-important black boxes that are in the cockpit are being analysed. In terms of who is involved in this investigation, well, Iran has said it will invite all those countries that had citizens on board to join the investigations. As you mentioned in your introduction there, French investigators, Canadian and the US as well, of course, because it was a Boeing plane which is manufactured by the US company. They may well be involved in this as well. Now, Iran, of course, dismissing these claims. They say that in their initial report following the crash, they claim it was a technical issue, and that all of these claims amount to what they're calling psychological warfare against Iran. Now, when it comes to other countries' conclusions, Ukraine, their Security and Defence Council say there may well be they're looking at four potential options, one of which is a mid-air collision with something like a drone or another flying object, an engine explosion as a result of a technical failure, which is what Iran claim this may well be, a terror attack on board, or a Tor missile strike. Now, we know that Iran does have Russian missile launching capabilities, and as we've already heard, a majority of countries now in the Western world seeming to draw that conclusion. However, they have all been quick to caveat their assumptions with the fact that this is still very early stages, that it is still too quick to draw such conclusions. But of course, if this is the case, if this probe does turn out to prove that this was an Iranian missile that brought down this plane, and that would be an extraordinary error on behalf of Iran.
Yeah, a number of concerns already being raised by various authorities that this crash site has been cleared quite quickly by the Iran authorities, and that all of this evidence is now sitting in a hangar, and it could mean that some evidence perhaps may not be where it's supposed to be.
Well, yes, because the plane came down near Tehran. Of course, it was travelling from Tehran to Kiev, and many of the Canadians in particular were travelling on to Toronto. But because it came down in Iran. They do have authority over the investigation, but they have now invited others, as I said, with citizens that were on board the plane to join the investigation. And all of the leaders, including Justin Trudeau and Boris Johnson, have called for a full, credible and transparent investigation. Trudeau even saying that Canada will not rest until it finds justice for those passengers on board that were killed. Now, of course, as you mentioned, there is concern in particular in relation to Iran's clearing of the evidence. They claim that they have not bulldozed the area. That is not the case. We've also seen footage emerge as well in the past 24 hours obtained by the New York Times that appears to show the missile bringing down the plane. Of course, it hasn't yet been verified, but it appears to show a sort of ball of fire flying across the sky and hit that might have been the plane, and an explosion can be heard. Now, that will no doubt be being looked at by investigators on all sides of this. But the sort of key here, of course, will be cooperation with Iran. However, they will be no doubt looking to save face here, because this will complicate things diplomatically for them. It will very much add pressure on them as well, at a time when, of course, tensions are continuing to escalate. The US has only just, and Iran have only just really stepped back from the brink of war this week, and this will only serve to potentially complicate matters. And also a lot of Iranians too upset over and angry over this incident. Many were dual Iranian nationals on board and have already taken to social media to express their anger, their upset at the fact that this Tehran airport wasn't closed. And of course, they were in a conflict zone at the time. Questions as to how this could be allowed to happen by Iranian authorities, of course, if it is proved that this was the case, that it was an Iranian missile that brought down this plane.
All right, Holly, we're going to have to leave it there, but thanks very much indeed for that update.